how was your journey here to the Ukraine?
We went all the way across Hungary from Budapest, and we were worried about the border. Sometimes I guess there are long delays at the border, but we did not have a long delay, and it was efficient, and we got to see fall colors on the trees all the way over here, so we had a delightful journey.
What about your staying here? Did you have a chance for sightseeing or for other activities here?
We did not have a chance for sightseeing. The only thing we did was go to the Roma camp, the large camp with 10,000 people. We had a worship service with them at noon on a Wednesday, and then toured their facilities, played with the children, saw the artwork and the music, the good work that they're doing. And actually, of all the things to see in this area, that's the one I would most want to see.
In your other interviews, you have been spoken about finding God through the nature, through classical music and romantic love.
Correct.
Yes. How did you manage to return to the church itself after you have found God?
I found a really great church, finally. We moved to Chicago, and we thought we would spend weeks looking around because there are many churches in Chicago. Instead, the very first week, we found a church that combined good theology with lived theology. This church used the resources of people who had some and reached out to the poor, to the lonely, to single mothers, to the elderly, and we were always nourished in the worship services through the sermon, for sure, the music, everything that was happening in the worship services. But it didn't just happen on Sunday. We actually put our faith into motion throughout the week, using a lot of volunteers. My wife, for example, was director of a senior citizens program, and they must have had 50 or 60 volunteers who would visit the seniors, who would fix meals for them, who would take them to the doctor, do chores around the house. And it was the church in action. And when you see a healthy church actually living out the way Jesus wanted us to, how can you stay away? I wrote about churches that did not do that so well, but we finally found one that did, and I wanted to return.
The next question is about those members of the community who had past grievances, harms from other members of the community, and they say, I have done with the church, I will pray at home, and I don't need to go to the church. How could the leaders of the community get back these people to the community?
I like to quote, I think it's one of the early church fathers named Irenaeus, and he said, a coal taken away from the fire loses its heat. And I think that's a good metaphor for people who say, okay, I can keep my spiritual life going, but I don't need the church. Again and again, I've seen people who do that. They stay home on Sunday. First, they start using that time for praying and reading, meditating, and then they say, oh, I think maybe I'll watch something on television instead. And a year later, they really have lost all interest and attention in spiritual matters. So to those of us who go to church, I say, well, sometimes the church doesn't always meet our needs, but it's a place where we can help meet other people's needs. It's not just about making us feel good. It's about creating a community where we serve others, and we may be at a point someday when we need their serving us. And that's what a community is. Bear one another's burdens, the Bible tells us. For the pastor or priest, that is a role where that the leader can encourage the kind of reconciliation that they need. So if there are some people still in the church who have offended people who have left, the pastor can work with them and say, shouldn't you just say a word of apology, say you're sorry, say you didn't mean that, and the pastor can help bring about a kind of reconciliation. I feel most grieved for the people who leave, though, because in the end, often they're the ones who lose. They lose the spiritual life, and then they lose the community support around them.
Another question about this word of indifferent people who care about nothing, actually. What do you think about this mindset of people? How can we help them?
I look for what I call hinge moments, like when a door turns on a hinge. And there are certain times in life when people are more open to a spiritual message. For instance, getting married, getting confirmed, when you were sick, the birth of a baby. And I think if the church leaders focus some of their programs around those hinge moments, they can, those are moments when people are more open. They're going to go to church for a wedding, maybe. They're going to say vows that are pretty serious vows. So the pastor, the priest can go through those vows and explain them. And I know, for example, I know a pastor who does nothing but performs weddings. And he advertises on the internet, so that when the people call him, they don't know any other pastors. And that's how they find him, on the internet, Googling. And it's a great opportunity for him. So he counsels with a couple a few times before they get married, and has great conversations where he explores, why did you want a pastor? Why do you want to get married? And often they open up and share far more than they were planning to.
One final question about the people in the US and the people here in Europe, Western and Eastern Europe. What have you experienced here by your visits?
Right. There are a couple of key differences. One is that very often, historically in Europe, one branch of the church becomes closely allied with the government, becomes the state church. So in German, Lutheran, parts of German Catholic. In Sweden, it would be very different. In Norway, it would be very different. In the United States, from the very beginning, many of the people who immigrated to the United States were being persecuted by some of those state churches, like the Puritans in England. So they, from the beginning, they said, we will not be that closely tied to the government. Religion will be free, but there won't be one religion that gets an advantage over another one. And as a result, there are a lot of denominations in the United States, and there's not one that's privileged over the rest. So it's almost like a free enterprise marketplace of religion. It has some good parts and some bad parts, but that's quite different. And because of that, the church style changes more quickly in the United States. So, for example, music. Most churches, not all, but in my experience, most churches have moved to a more modern type of music, often with a guitar or a band, as opposed to an organ and piano and choir. Well, I personally prefer the organ and piano and choir, but a lot of Americans don't. Not that many people listen to classical music. So the church changes quickly, some good and some bad. But maybe the second thing is more important, and that is Americans tend to be very open people, and especially in post-Soviet societies, various people who lived under the watching eye of the government, they learned not to express themselves, not to share secrets, because that can be dangerous. Maybe you are an informer and you will tell the authorities what I just said. And we didn't have that fear in the United States, or haven't to this point. And so things like small groups where you get together and share concerns, maybe pray together, have a Bible study together, those are natural in the United States. I think it's difficult here, especially in the post-Soviet societies. It will take a while. I personally find those very nourishing, and I hope that gradually Eastern Europe will open up and experience some of that more in-depth community sharing, not just working together, but truly bearing one another's burdens.
Thank you.